So if you want to do big deals right away, if you want to scale up rapidly, you have to get out of the idea that you are playing, pickleball by yourself against a wall, and you are playing basketball with a team of 5 other people or 4 other people or whatever. You're playing baseball with a group of 9. You are now a team. You have a role, they have a role, everyone has a role, and everyone's designed to be perfect at their role. And remember I said earlier, it's easier to buy a 100-unit apartment complex than a single-family house. It can be largely because each person in the organization is both incredible at that role. They're designed by God for that role. Like, in other words, their personality fits it exactly, and they love that role. Like, it's just perfect. And so you get people in each of those roles. So here's the kind of the 4-step framework for building a team. You ready? Number 1, establish your vision of where you're headed. The world craves leaders with vision. Like, the world craves, like, there's nothing worse than following a leader who doesn't know where they're going, right? They're just like blindly walking around. I would rather have a leader just boldly say where they're going than to just be like, I don't know, we're just kind of figuring things out. Like, I want decisiveness in a leader, even if it's the wrong choice. Because nobody really knows the right choice. I just want somebody who's more like, this is where we're headed as a group. So when I started Opener Capital, I'm like, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate over the next 3 years. And everyone's like, yeah, we are. And it's like, you guys, let me be honest here. I had no idea how I was going to do that. I had no idea how I was going to buy $50 million of real estate. I didn't know if that's the right number. Should it have been 40? Should it have been 20? Should it have been 100? I don't know. I was just like, I just picked a number and I'm like, let's do that number. And I just acted confident. There's a great quote from Kurt Vonnegut that says, he's an author, who says, we must be careful of what we pretend to be because we become what we pretend to be. And it's like, I was like, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate. Let's go. And the first person I showed that to was Ryan Murdoch, who was a good friend of mine. He actually lives in my backyard. He still does. I showed Ryan my vision. I said, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate. We're going to buy 1,000 units in mobile home parks. And he goes, I want to be a part of that. Because people, again, the world craves leaders with vision. There's a Bible verse about that. It's like where people perish where vision lacks or something like that. It's like, it's in Proverbs, I think. It's like we crave vision, the end. People do. Even like when I go to a shoe store, I don't want the shoe salesman going, I don't know, there's a lot of shoes in here. I mean, I don't know, there's lots of them. Which one do what one? I want them to go, this is the shoe I'm going to sell you because this is the best shoe for your foot because I know your foot. I know you. I know what you want. This is the shoe. And I'd be like, sell me that shoe. I'll pay any amount, right? I want a leader who tells me what to do. We all want that decisiveness sometimes, even if we don't admit it. So build that vision and start talking about it everywhere you go. I like a 5-year vision, 3 to 5. You can go 5 if you want. I did 3 originally. 3 to 5 year vision that this is what we're going to buy. This is why in the Better Life Tribe, a big component of the tribe and what we do every quarter and every year when we do our annual is the idea of the 5-year future you. Who do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want we have a real estate version of it. What do you want your real estate to look like in 5 years? And get real clear on what that is. Where do you buy? What do you buy? How much do you have? Why do you do it? Where are you at? What's your team look like? So you start telling people, this is what I'm doing. And you act with confidence and everyone's like, all right, here we go. And then it just works. It's like magic. It's crazy. All right. So establish your 5-year vision. That's number 1 on Play a Team Sport. Number 2, establish your company's culture, and that's largely through your core values. Now, for years, I railed against core values. Like, people talk about core values, I'm like, fluffy corporate jargon nonsense. Like, I wear sweatshirts. I don't wear a suit. I ain't got no core values. But and that's because I'd been in companies who their core values were like integrity and we work hard and do the best you can do. And it was all just like generic, like you put it on a motivational poster in some like Office Space type of a movie. And it was just silly, right? It didn't mean anything. And then we went through a practice, worked with a consultant to establish core values for Open Door Capital. And it's things like, literally one of our core values is no suits. That's one of our core values because I'm like, that's who I am as a person. And my company is a reflection of me as a person. So therefore, I don't want us to wear suits. Like, we are a real estate investment company with $1 billion in real estate. And I have not wore a suit other than I went to one date with my wife in Scotland where I bought a thrift shop suit for $12. That's a whole different story. And my wife bought a dress that was the most stunning, beautiful dress ever seen her in. And it was like $3 at a thrift shop in Scotland. Great night. Anyway, other than that, I don't wear a suit. Haven't worn one in years. And I still bought $1 billion of real estate. That's a core value. Guess what? Every person we hire, they're not suit people. And in fact, we hired one guy who was a suit person because I'm like, he's the best. He's really good. He lasted like 3 months. He didn't fit with our culture. I love the guy. He just didn't fit with the culture and what we had going. So that's all right. Core value is established so that you know how to hire and fire people by a standard. This is the standard we operate in. So you have your vision, and now you have your culture defined largely through your core values, but also just in the way that you interact with people in your culture. And now you want to build out your organizational chart, your org chart. You will need this if you want to do big deals. And a lot of you are like, well, I don't have the money to hire people. Just stick with me for a minute. You don't need money. I did not spend any money on people. To this day, I technically have still never spent any of my own money on any of my staff, and I have 150 employees. So you build your org chart, and in the beginning, it's likely, I don't want to say empty, but it's all you. So an org chart, for those not familiar, an organizational chart is a chart where you list every single role that the company has and who each person reports to. So usually at the top, you got a big circle. And so at the top, you got like this circle, and it probably says CEO, right? You can use different terminology. Below that, you might have COO. In a big corporation, you have a CEO who's more the visionary. You have a COO who's more of the integrator, tactical person. Below the COO, you likely have VPs. Now, you might be thinking, this is crazy, Brandon. I got no employees right now. It's okay. I want you to write out the org chart anyway. There's going to be blank, or they're going to have your name there. Because right now, these roles exist. This is important. The roles already exist. You just don't have people to fill them yet. But the roles do exist. You're just wearing all the hats different moments of the day. You're running acquisitions. You're running investor relations. You're running finance. You're doing everything. So let's write down an org chart. So you got CEO, COO, and then you got your VPs. Who do you have VP-wise? And I promise you, I did this on that airplane ride where I wrote out my vivid vision for the company. And I showed Ryan. I actually wrote my entire org chart for my 5-year company or 3-year company. I wrote down what would we have to be able to buy $50 million of real estate every year. And so I wrote that down. The org chart, there was VP of acquisitions, because we need somebody that's in charge of buying deals. I said I need a VP of investor relations, because we're going to have to raise money. So I need somebody who can help me raise money. I'm going to need a VP of finance, because there's a lot of money that goes in and out. And again, don't get caught up on the actual role titles. It doesn't matter. It could be director of finance. It doesn't matter. But I had finance, and with finance, I kind of rope in administration and HR. It's kind of like one, like at least in the beginning right now with a fairly small company, it's like finance, admin, HR. That's, by the way, Micah Kabagbag, who lives out here in Maui. He is so good. So good. Then I have asset management. Somebody's got to make sure the properties are performing well and doing a good job. So there's asset management. And so there's these different roles here. Am I missing one there? I feel like that. There's like those are the main ones, right? I'm going to buy a deal. I'm going to finance the deal. I got investor relations, for doing that. I got finance. I got asset management. That's maybe the gist of it. And then you might have an administrative assistant in there. And so I have like an admin assistant I made sure to include. Disposition. Somebody wrote down disposition. That is true. In the beginning, I did not have a role for that, but you could definitely write that. And maybe that's just you. And maybe they're under acquisition. How would you want that? I love the org chart practice. We could spend 2 hours on this, and maybe we will sometime, actually. Would you guys like that in the tribe? Would you guys want like a whole practice where we actually do this together? I find it one of the most helpful things. In fact, I did a thing called the Maui Masterclass for a number of years. Maybe I'll bring it back someday, where we fly in 30 investors fly into Maui. We hang out at a hotel for 4 days. This is one of the practices we did at Maui Masterclass. We'd actually write out our org charts, and it was super valuable. So, okay, yeah, everyone's saying yes. Okay, I'll make sure to schedule that at some point. So you write out your organizational chart, and now you can look at and by the way, under that, you might have more people. You might spec those out. So under investor relations, I've got a role that says like head of social media. Well, who's the head of social media at Open Door Capital? It's actually still me. I'm still running social media for Open Door Capital just because I like that. So I'm both CEO, or was at the top, and I'm at the bottom as well, and that's totally fine, because in the beginning you're in every single role. And over time, you're going to be able to fill all those spots. Now, if you've got a lot of money or a lot of balls, you can go out and just hire all those people on salaries from day one and just manage them. And here's the great thing about having big deals, like doing big deals, is that there's a thing called an acquisition fee. When you buy a $20 million apartment complex, let's just say, you're going to charge, there's going to be something called an acquisition fee. It's typically 2% that you're charging to your investors, because you're going to have to raise money for this. We can talk about that maybe later, but you're going to have to raise money for that. You're going to add on a 2% fee. It could be 2.5, could be 1.5, could be 1. That fee would pay for your staff. That's the whole point of it. So if you're buying $20 million property, 2% of 20 million is that 40,000? Am I doing that right? 400,000, 4 million. Yeah, so 10% of 20 million would be 2 million. So yeah, 200,000 would be 1%. So it's $400,000. Am I doing that right? Yeah. So $400,000, now all of a sudden you can pay for your staff just by one $20 million apartment building. You can now afford 4 full-time salary people. Like, that's cool. So it's not like that's why I say either you have a lot of money or you have a lot of balls. Cause like it takes a lot of like, oh, I'm going to go and spend $500,000 on salaries and hope that it works out. The other way to do it, which is what I did, because I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of balls to do this. When it came to Open Door Capital, I wasn't sure. Instead, I gave equity. That's the alternative. I brought in partners. Brian Murray. When I brought in Brian Murray took a big chunk of Open Door Capital. He's the second largest shareholder of Open Door Capital besides me. Brian Murray's asset management. He had owned a couple thousand units. I think I could trust him to help manage properties. Originally, I brought in Ryan Murdoch was my original acquisitions, and then later became COO, and then later went to the board of directors, just like Brian and me now. I brought in for underneath Ryan. Then we brought in a guy named eventually who was an intern that we offered equity to, a guy named Walker Meadows. Walker was an intern who got some equity. And then we moved him to director of acquisitions. Then we moved him to VP of acquisitions. Then we moved him to COO. And then a few months ago, I promoted him to CEO. He is the head of all Open Door Capital at this point. He's phenomenal, and he worked his way in there. But I didn't pay him a salary in the beginning. He was an intern that got equity. Ryan got equity. Brian got equity. Mike Williams was investor relations. He was not quite intern. Well, I guess he was an intern for a few months. He was an intern with equity, same as Walker. He just did a great job. And then eventually, once we bought our first deal and got that acquisition fee, then I put him on salary. That's why I say I never spent my money on any of it. Now, what did that cost me, though? Over 50% of Open Door Capital, I gave away to my employees. Over 50% is owned by my employees. It will probably, that decision, and this was the best decision I could have ever made, but that decision is a $1 billion decision, because if I would have just kept it all and gave them all salaries, I'd probably end up with another $1 billion at the end of my career. But I don't want it. I would much rather have a team that's aligned. And to be honest, I don't know if we would get there if I didn't align our interests together. Brian wouldn't have done it for a salary. Ryan wouldn't have done it for a salary. And so that's the points that I made so far in Playing a Team Sport. I said, create your vision, establish your company culture and core values, build out your organizational chart. And then the fourth one is give your team a path toward independent wealth for themselves. You have to align. Another way to say that is to align financial interests. So align financial interest is the fourth part here of Playing a Team Sport, is make sure everybody wins. In fact, I want every single person on my team to know that they will make more by being a part of my team than they will by doing it on their own, because of the vision that I have and the systems that I've built, that I believe they will do better with me than on their own. And it's more fun to do it together. It's way more fun to play a team sport than to throw a ball against the wall, right? Like, nobody wants to just like sit there. So huge fan on that. And then the last point, I'll give you a fifth point on play a team sport, and then we'll move on, because I know we got to wrap pretty soon here. And that is this: you have to manage people inside of a system. You have to management is a skill set that most people do not have innately, and you manage inside of a system. So if you have a company with multiple employees, We use a system called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. But it really works when you have lots of employees. I highly recommend it. If you are a solopreneur, we are introducing something heavily this year within the Better Life Tribe called REIOS, the Real Estate Investors Operating System, which is similar to like EOS or Scaling Up or 4DX, all these systems that manage companies. But it's designed for people who are working by themselves for now because it's too hard to run those big systems when you just have yourself or one or two employees. So we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks and months. But big fan of that idea of just you have to manage your team, including yourself, within a system.